Hello, what's up guys? It's your friendly neighborhood weeb YouTuber, Jade here. And today we're talking about the Cold Steel Northern War anime. So before I get into my core opinions, I really want to hit on sort of community reception and like the interesting and wacky nature of Kiseki community degeneracy, because I find that fascinating to talk about. It would behoove me to discuss some of that shit and some of the things that I semi-agree / disagree with. So currently the MAL page for this anime is sitting at a 6.48. We've only had one episode and already people are like,
yeah, it's fucking bad. It's the worst thing ever. I fucking hate it. It's nothing like Kiseki.
So yeah, very interesting, but very typical, very fascinating as well. Based on a single post I've seen, because I haven't really seen any concrete, people talking negatively, except for one particular person on Twitter. I will block out their name so you can't see and go after them or whatever. But this guy mainly goes into a lot of the general talking points that I've heard through hearsay. And one of the most common criticisms is that it's not like Trails, it's not like Kiseki, that it somehow is different or it deviates somehow from the feeling that the series is supposed to have. Another criticism I've seen is a very vague and non-specific critique of the narrative and the plot. It's very rare that they actually go into detail about what exactly irks them about it, other than them just saying that it's bad. Now, I'm no cinematography expert, but another thing that's criticized is the general direction of the story and also the CGI in it. And I have my opinions on CGI. In general, my critique of these critiques is that how they're non-specific, which makes sense because we're only on episode 1. I think that a lot of this is born out of this knee-jerk reaction to what we're seeing on the screen right now, rather than a well-thought-out, well-put-together piece of criticism. It's less about actually looking into the series and actually thinking critically about what it does right, what it does wrong, where it's going wrong, and really pointing to the specific moments that are off, and more about an emotional, once again, knee-jerk reaction to it not living up to an image they have in their head of what it's supposed to be, which is a very common problem with Kiseki overall, or rather the Kiseki fan base, is that they have a tendency to get super emotional about their expectations not 100% being met. And understandably, the series and the franchise can be really fucking amazing when it's really amazing. So in a lot of ways, that's a double-edged sword, and them just really expecting the best that media has to offer from Kiseki, from Trails, all the time, and oftentimes forgetting that this is media made by human beings who are flawed, and therefore the media itself will also be flawed. So that's my general opinion on it. Oh yeah, I almost forgot one more thing. Another criticism that I've seen a lot is a general critique of the exposition in the story. I have no idea why people are so bent out of shape over this, because in a lot of ways there's so much detail and so much shit that they don't have the time to really go into because of how vast the lore and the detail in Kiseki / Trails is. And a lot of the things that they're bringing up in this episode is stuff that is required to know. Like, you're supposed to know this shit because we're talking about North Ambria. And this is all common knowledge if you've actually played the game. So I have no idea what the fuck people are talking about on that front. Maybe it could be criticism of the way that this is delivered, but I don't really know how they could have done it any better, because there's a lot of information. In a lot of cases, the games will do a thing where if you want to see, rather than outright telling you about certain events or certain lore details, they'll just point you in the direction. Cold Steel does this. They'll just point you in the direction of, oh, go to this library and read up on this thing, because there's just so much to talk about. And if they had to go into every little detail every game, you know, it would just become monotonous and it would just drag out. So in a lot of ways, I don't really know what they mean by it having too much exposition, given that what we're told in that episode is literally the bare minimum you need to know in order to contextualize certain things, because we're talking about Northumbria. But yeah. Now on to the main topic. Jesus Christ. This video is going to be so much fucking longer than I really wanted it to be, but I just had to address that, I guess. But yeah, moving on. So stepping away from that negativity for a second, I want to talk about certain things I liked. Now, one thing that comes to mind is the symbolism of the Jaeger armor. So, for those of you who are not familiar too much with the Kiseki franchise or the series, the Northern Jaegers, which are the paramilitary group that appears in this story, appear in some of the other arcs of the games, and one of the things about them is that you rarely, if ever, see a Northern Jaeger member without their helmet and their iconic armor off. And in a way, it sort of strips them of their individuality and really sets them up as these like mobs that you have to tear through. So you don't really see them as individual people, more like just baddies, you know, generic goons. And I like that in this story, towards the point in the episode where the main character, Lavienne, like when she goes up and she like kills that rampaging monster, you see her helmet fall off and all of a sudden she becomes human. I like that symbolism, and I think it's like playing around with that idea of what a person who's played the games would think of a Jaeger or a Northern Jaeger, like playing around with that idea of like you take off that helmet and now all of a sudden they're more like people, they're more like human, you know. I also like how you get to see how the Northern Jaegers are thought of in Northumbria. In Northumbria, they're more like heroes to the people. They're closer to some more other heroic groups throughout the series, like the Bracer Guild. I don't know if this series will go into those guys, but they're more like good guy type people that you would see in like in the games in the other countries and stuff like that, whereas the Northern Jaegers are viewed not so favorably in a lot of other countries. But in Northumbria, they're sort of like the guys who do everything. They're the military, they're the police, they're also like the bracers. They deal with all these like problems and people come to them with their concerns, and I find that to be very fascinating and very much a shift away from our perception of the Northern Jaegers. So very fascinating. Anyway, those are the main positives I have for the series, but I also have some criticisms or some things I think the story could do better at, you know, certain little details. So a lot of the criticism I have for the story is coming from the perspective of, if you're not somebody who's very familiar with Kiseki and trails, there's certain things that are just lost on you as a viewer. And I feel like the story could do more to really highlight that. Like, for example, Northumbria is a very poor country. It's very cripplingly destitute, close to like a third world country by Zamorian, which is the continent they live on, by Zamorian terms, right? But it's hard to get that perspective because you don't really know what the other countries are like from the first episode. And I understand that they can't really go just show you, oh, Heimdall in Erebonia or something like that, or Crossbell City. But what I think they could definitely do is really exaggerate the poverty. Because in the games, for those of you who don't know, there are characters that talk about there being a slum in the capital city. And I really think it would be interesting if they showed that off a lot more, showed off the more destitute aspects of the nation. Yeah, they had those people in those shacks in the village, but again, if you're just watching this without context, you don't know how poor they are in Zamorian terms. You don't have the context. So really hammering that home more, I think, would be great. Another criticism I have is the CGI. It's one of the things I can kind of agree with some of the people in the fan base. I think that this is a very reoccurring problem with CGI and anime altogether, is that it just clashes with the backgrounds. And I understand why they use CGI, because it makes it easier on them to animate these vehicles and these like machinery. But yeah, it just clashes a bit, and I definitely don't think they're going to change it throughout throughout the series, so I hope that it's just not super distracting. I also think the episode could have started better, basically. I think that the slow pace of how they started the episode is not really ideal for the series. It's not very exciting. It doesn't really get you pumped up for what's going on. Once again, I feel like this series was really made for people who have played the games and sort of understand a lot of things already and already have the pieces in their head to fill in the gaps in the anime. But that's not ideal if you're somebody who's just watching this for the first time just for fun and you know jack shit about Kiseki. And I think that's a big problem. Take, for example, the speech at the end by a character named Rogan. This big ass blue haired Jaeger boss motherfucker, right? And he goes on this speech about how the revolutionaries in Northumbria have basically like failed them, right? This speech would hit a lot more if they really emphasized the poverty and political corruption of Northumbria rather than relying on external knowledge based in the games. Overall, by low-budget anime adaptation standards, it's not really that bad, but it could be so much better. It could be so much more than what it is. So I understand some of the disappointment, but at the same time, I don't think it's like the worst thing ever. And I feel like people are really jumping the gun with a lot of the over-the-top hatred for it so far. Given that we've only seen one episode, we don't have the complete package of what this anime is going to be. I don't even think they've really gone on record to say how many episodes we're going to get. So there's still a lot of time for them to really turn this shit around and do more interesting stuff. And I hope / believe that they can, given that, again, they put in the thought into the whole concept of the armor and the mask and how the Jaegers are viewed in Northumbria. They put in that effort there to portray that stuff, so I definitely think their mind is in the right place. They just need to like hit harder on the more important details of characterizing the setting and also characterizing the actual characters, because I feel like they could put more effort into really showcasing what our main trio so far is like. Other than Lavian, we really don't get that much information about the other two, and even with Lavian, the information itself is relatively sparse. But then again, who knows? We'll just have to wait till the next episode to see what they do. Overall, I enjoyed myself watching it, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it too. That's the video. I hope you enjoyed my assessment, my analysis. If you have any thoughts on your own and what you think, you can put them down in the comments below. I will continue to watch it because I'm interested to know what happened during the Northern War. So whether it's bad or good, I don't fucking care. Just trying to have fun, having a good time. That's what anime is about, buddy. So yeah, this was way too fucking long. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.